Welcome to Aligned on AI, the podcast where we have real conversations with business leaders about what's changing in their industries and where AI will actually help. Today, I'm joined by Marc Haine, based in Devon, Alberta, in Canada, who has spent more than 35 years working in hospitality, retail, customer experience, and leadership development, and now runs Marc Haine, Essential Hospitality Solutions Incorporated, helping organizations improve customer and employee experiences and elite headline speakers, a speaker curator specialist business. So Mark brings a fascinating perspective because he has seen businesses evolve from entirely face-to-face service through the internet and digital transformation era and now into the world of AI and automation. So we're going to explore how leaders can improve efficiency without accidentally making their business feel robotic. We'll also look at where businesses are struggling with leadership, culture, and operational consistency, where AI could genuinely help, and where humans absolutely still need to lead the way. While AI is becoming remarkably capable, I think most of us would still prefer a genuine apology from a real person than a perfectly optimized algorithm explaining how sorry it is calculated itself to be. So in this conversation, we explore customer experience, operational excellence, leadership, workplace culture, employee engagement, service consistency, hospitality lessons from other industries, and how businesses can stay human while becoming more efficient. So Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. This is great to be here.
It is really you, isn't it? Please tell me it's you. I can't tell
really
anymore. Luckily, Mark doesn't normally talk like that, so you'll see the real
No,
him.
thank goodness. No, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, Carl.
Appreciate it. So, Mark, for people hearing about you for the first time, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up specializing in customer and employee experience.
Yeah, so I spent the last 30 years in hospitality. I worked in casinos, hotels, restaurants, and, pulling my hair out because I used to tell people, hospitality is a tough gig. If it wasn't for all the people, hospitality would be a cinch. Of course, hospitality is all about people. So, of course, that makes absolutely no sense at all. But having said that, I always thought that this was a challenge that we had in hospitality. It was unique to hospitality, of course, because that was the bubble I lived in. And in 2014, I got hired by the community, town of Devon, to be their economic development officer because the community was getting slammed on social media. In that, people would come and visit us. They'd go down to the river. They'd go to the campgrounds. Oh, it was so wonderful. It was great. It was such a nice visit. They have such nice amenities. This is so fantastic. It's too bad when we went into town, ... this happened. And we realized that we had a service delivery problem within the community. And this is typical in small communities. People don't like strangers. And they weren't treated very well. And so the municipality came to me and said, Mark, you're a service expert. Can you please come and, do a service excellence program for the community? And so I jumped on board to do that. But what was interesting about that was it gave me a peek into all these different industries. And I realized that everything I had been kind of complaining about in hospitality, that I thought was an endemic to hospitality, I saw in every single business. Everything from the customer component to the leadership component. People were complaining about the same things. And it was interesting because when I started working as a consultant with businesses, people would tell me one thing, Mark, you have to understand, I know there's lots of businesses like mine out there, but mine is unique. And that's exactly how I felt in hospitality. I felt I was in my bubble. And I thought, this is a hospitality program. And then I realized that it was so much bigger than that. And so being able to look at how do we become more hospitable to our customers, but how do we become more hospitable to our staff? And that led me down the journey of this idea of customer and employee experience, about designing experiences.
Okay. So you've described businesses almost like a live performance or theatre production. Where did that philosophy come from?
So in 2015, working at the town of Devon Economic Development, my friend Key pops her head around the corner and she says, Mark, you act, don't you? And she's actually from Devon, UK, and she moved to Devon, Alberta. And I said, well, sometimes I act silly, sometimes I act goofy, but most times I act immature. And she goes, no, like, I mean, on stage. And I have to tell you, it was something I've always wanted to do. My kids did it, but I was like I'm too scared to do stuff like that, right? Because I don't remember what I had for breakfast. How am I going to remember lines? And so she says to me, Mark, You'd be a perfect fit for this character. And why don't you come and do an audition and see? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to pull up my big boy panties and I'm going to give this a try. And so I went to the audition, I got the part and I committed. And I have to say, 4 months of rehearsals, I can tell you after about 3 months of rehearsals, nothing is funny anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
Nothing. You've gone over it and over it, or you've lived it for 3 months, and then 2 weeks before grand opening, before the opening night, you're thinking to yourself, "Why am I doing this? This is like so much stress. Like I still have things I'm missing. It's like what happens if we go on and we're not ready?" And you have all this self-doubt, and you're just like, "Why am I doing this? Why are we putting ourselves through this? Why are we doing this?" And on opening night, I don't know, for the people who've never been in live theater, basically the backstage is completely dark except for a couple of hanging lights. And the venue, we're backstage. My hand is on the doorknob because I'm one of the first to go on. My hands are shaking. I'm in a panic. The whole venue goes dark. The music comes up. The lights flood the stage, and I could see the lights just pouring through the cracks in the door. And then the music cue of me having to go on, and I turn the door handle, I step on stage. I'm completely blinded because all these lights are on you. You can't see the audience at all. And so now I'm focused. Okay, just focus on my colleague walking the other way. And we do our first interaction, and from the dark, we hear 250 people start to laugh,
yeah, yeah.
like belly laughs.
Gosh,
And I got goosebumps because 2 weeks before I was saying, "Why are we doing this?" And then I realized this
this is why.
is what.
Yeah,
And I can't help thinking, like, being in business for so long, a lot of times we think to ourselves, "Why do we do this? Why do we commit to this? Like, why are we doing this it's a grind every single day." And I thought at that moment, as the hairs on my arm just kind of prickled, and I thought to myself, if businesses put the time, attention, and focus into their business as we did to do 6 shows, we would have amazing businesses.
yeah, yeah,
And so that took my customer experience and my employee experience hat, and it said, how do we design these experiences? And of course I wrote the book, right? It's taking a lens of live theater and wrapping it around business practices and showing how ridiculous our current business practices are, but how we could maybe shake things up a little bit so that every time we open the doors to our employees or to our customers, we're saying, hey, it's showtime.
it's a fascinating perspective. So it sounds terrifying as well. I don't think I could ever bring myself to do what you did, but yeah, I can imagine the rush was amazing. But looking back over your career, what major shifts have you seen in how businesses are interacting with customers and employees?
Well, I think we have an awareness, and I have to say the awareness I think is brought through the social media, the fact that people at a drop of, with just their thumbs and their device can affect our businesses right away. In fact, I have one keynote that I do for any customer centric business. It's called How to Respond to Harsh Online Reviews. And Respond is a 7-point framework on how to be able to frame a response to negative reviews so that we're not going to war with our customers, because I've seen that happen way too many times and it's never ends well. And so this response strategy is something about this idea, putting on a hat, putting ourselves in the position of our customers who might have a very real concern, and getting rid of our ego. Because, of course, we put our heart and soul into our businesses. And so when somebody slams us on social media, the number of people who come back, you don't understand what my business is like. You don't know how hard this is. You ain't try, and all they do is then chastise the customer for giving their feedback. And I say, let's use this opportunity to really shine as professionals. Let's use the opportunity to get into a conversation very publicly and show who's the big boy on the planet.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, you think today businesses are better at customer experience than they were 10, 20 years ago, or
No,
actually lost some of the important
I hate
elements?
I hate to say it, but I don't think they are at all.
I'm
And I
surprised.
think I
Yeah,
think now with the advent of AI, we're looking for ways to shortcut the whole process to be able to become more productive. Here's the problem is in our day and age, we're asked to do more with a lot less. And it just keeps on piling up. And where I think AI comes into the mix now, we have an opportunity to kind of offset some of our burden so that we can become more productive. It doesn't have to be, but again, to what you said at the very beginning, there needs to be a human in the mix. It needs to be that we're bringing our authentic selves to the foray. I do work with a lot of professional speakers as well, and I did a presentation to the Professional Speakers Association, and I talked about how, in very short order, anybody now can become a paid professional speaker. If you want me to talk about underwater basket weaving, Karl, you know what? Just give me a couple of weeks. And then I go on to AI and I generate the content. I memorize the content and then I come out and sell myself to you talking about underwater basket weaving. The challenge with that is when AI generates our content for us, they have no stories. They have no authenticity. I told you a story about how I got into acting. Hopefully it was compelling, it was funny, and hopefully I kept your attention. If I just went through what AI would tell me about that situation, hey, Karl, I started acting. I realized we did a really good job and decided that if businesses could do that, they would be awesome. And that's not as compelling as the human being that we bring to the forefront and the authenticity we bring to the forefront as human beings. And so I do know like there's tons of programs out there now. Let AI write your book. Write your book in 3 days. And it's like, if you do that, you're just taking the amalgamation of what's out there already. And let's face it, when it comes down to book writing, there's no real unique thoughts. There might be unique perspectives, but we've heard it all before. There's not, even a groundbreaking book like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you just analyze that whole book, there's stuff in there from the Bible. There's other people's stories in there. There's when it's not really unique. It was the framing and the perspective that was unique, right? And so now
Yeah.
you take knowledge of the world and stick it into a book. How boring is that going to be? Because it doesn't have our stories and it doesn't have any authenticity behind it.
That's an excellent way of describing the real sort of difference between a human created output and an AI created one. So I think you've explained that really well. And the authenticity side of it is just it knocks the nail on the head with how you explained that there. But so we're obviously seeing businesses, they're investing heavily in tech, but the culture and the experience still seems to make the biggest difference. But so what are some of the related common mistakes that you've seen organizations make when it comes to this and customer and employee experience?
So, a couple of things. One is, I think we give managers way too much work to do. Many times when I'm coaching organizations and we're trying to kind of shift the culture to be kind of a safe culture, to be a productive culture that kind of aligns with the needs of people. One of my other programs I talk about is Strings Attached, which is a program that I have that I actually map customer and employee journeys. Believe it or not, every time we are in a interaction together, we're actually on a journey, you and I. And if the longer that our relationship goes as a customer or as an employee, whatever, the longer that goes, the more that relationship will evolve. And so our employees evolve with us. And I think what happens is we treat people the way that we hired them. So number one, we're constricting people to their job descriptions. And people, whenever I talk to leaders, I say, how many of you have people in your organization that have far more capacity than their job description allows? And after a couple of seconds, every hand in the room goes up. And that's because we hire people to fill a job description, but then we fail to recognize that these people that we're putting into these positions also have their own superpowers. And they might not be in the ideal position to be able to tap into their superpowers. And so I started off by saying we give managers way too much work to do, because one of the things I suggest is we need to turn managers into coaches. Instead of waiting for the annual performance review process, which just makes every fiber of my body just go, we train managers to be coaches. And by being coaches, meeting regularly with our team members to be able to coach them through their journey, we're able then to figure out what are their superpowers? Well, how can we make them tap into the brilliance of what they bring to the forefront, to the table, and help them create a path within our organization that they're going to be able to shine. But every time I suggest we do that, the first thing a manager says is, are you kidding me? Do you know how much work I have to do? I have to send in this report. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And that's why I say we give managers way too much time. We turn managers into kind of a backup plan for when somebody doesn't show up on shift, a backup plan to be able to support our bosses. I need this report by Friday. Can you please get me this report? And the manager stops being a leader and is forced into technician mode, where they have their job description to do. And so when an employee comes in with a need, a customer comes in with a need, they're like, oh, don't you know how busy I am? I don't have time for this. And because of that, our businesses are stagnant. And so when you ask what's changed in the last 10, 15, 20 years, I look at it and I go, that hasn't changed. I still see frontline supervisors on the, dealing with the frontline employees saying things like, Donna, if you don't like it, clerks like you are a dime a dozen. And I would love to be able to go up to the manager and say, hey, I just want to, there are better ways to do it. You really suck as a manager. Would you like some help? But I have a sneaking suspicion that would shut them down.
Maybe. So you've talked about authenticity in terms of creativity, very valid point made there. But we've discussed about using authenticity and generosity in leadership as well. So just explain it again in practical business terms. What does that actually look like day to day?
Yeah. So when we look at this idea, like my tagline is to lead with love and kindness first. We are constantly in a realm of crisis. There's always one crisis or another. And I don't care what industry it is, you're going to have a supplier coming or a customer coming to you. They need something by Thursday. There's no way they're going to get it by Thursday because we have the truck sitting on the highway or in customs or what. We're always going to be in crisis. If we understand that that is kind of be our default mode, I think that we have the ability to look within the crisis and be very intentional about how we react to things. I had a epiphany moment when I was running a hotel. I had promised my wife that I was going to be home by 5 o'clock. It was very rare that I'm home for supper in hospitality. And by 3 o'clock, I was like, yes, honey, I'll be there. I'll leave in an hour. It'll be great. Then the phone rings and one of my serving staff calls in sick. And it's like, okay, I'll just adjust the schedule. Then a few minutes later, another serving calls in. And then at about 1:45, another one comes in. And I just had absolute temper tantrum, Karl. I very rarely have a temper tantrum, but I had a temper tantrum. I thought they were out to, sabotage my life. And I was like, fine. I had to call my wife. I said, honey, I'm sorry. I have to wait till after dinner service. And got through the service. And at 7 o'clock, I thought to myself, why the service went great. I said, why did I have such a connection? And I realized my big epiphany was I was harping on the problem, not dealing with it.
Yeah.
And so this idea that we're in crisis when we are kind of having our little conniption fits and we're having our temper tantrums and we're having the not so nice part of our personas. I realized that happens, number one, because our feelings get hurt and we're harping on the problem. Because all I complained about in that episode was how hard done by I was. Like these people, I do a lot for them. Like I was using language like, I do so much for them. Why would they do this to me? They're not doing it to me. They were sick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I became a victim. And so I think this in crisis, I think this happens quite a bit. And our reflective mode is, number one, we start pointing fingers. And I love the saying about if you point a finger at somebody, you're pointing 3 fingers to yourself. I love that.
Yeah.
I think when it comes down to breaking down the who's at fault in any one thing, I think we have to look at that as like, oh, look who's pointing the 3 fingers at.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And so having done that, the intentionality of knowing that nobody wakes up in the mornings thinking, okay, today I'm just going to shag the dog. I'm just going to make absolutely sure I do absolutely nothing. It's going to be a lazy day for me. And I'm just going to take my boss for a ride. Nobody wakes up like that. Everybody wakes up wanting to do the very best that they can. And so if we give our people the space to be able to do the best they can, and that includes, by the way, Karl, being able to fail forward. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a young supervisor get promoted because he was a great technician. He was great at what he does. And it's like, Karl, you are so fantastic at what you do. Why don't I promote you? And then you can teach everybody to be just as good as you. And then they promote you without giving you the training, without giving you the capacity building that you're required, because what you did before has a completely different job skill set than becoming a leader. And then you let this poor person just wallow with no skills, trying to do the best that they possibly can. And I do believe everybody I met in whatever industry, whenever I talk to people, I just realize that they're just trying to do the best they can. And if they're letting us down, if they're not performing, there's something wrong with us. And that's the 3 fingers. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And and I can relate to this, some books that I've read as well. It just, the chimp paradox book for me is out there. It's one that really explains your feelings, what happens, when you get yourself into those situations, and it really helps you sort of, as you say, point the three fingers back before you start pointing that one finger forward too far. So yeah, makes perfect sense to me. So how much does employee experience influence customer experience? Are they two sides of the same coin? Do they influence each other?
Well, Carl, if you're my frontline employee, and I tell you, you know what, Carl, I really want you to give our customers the very best experience. Can you do that? Can you do that, Carl? Okay, because as soon as you're done that, Carl, I want you to finish cleaning the washrooms, and I want to make sure that you behave in a proper way. Okay, Carl? Just make sure you take really good care of our customers. Okay, Carl? And it's like, how do you want your people to behave?
Yeah. Yeah.
And all too often, we memo our staff into customer service, customer compliance, and we're not recognizing what it takes to make things happen. I have a philosophy that what gets recognized and rewarded gets repeated. So here's a big thing. And again, years in hospitality, I had the privilege of dealing with people anywhere from 16-year-olds to, 40s. And having 16-year-olds coming in, they don't know what they're doing. Why do we have an expectation, Carl, that when people start a new job that they're going to be able to do it perfectly? Right? And people go, I don't know, this common sense. And it's like, common sense is not common sense. It's with common sense to us because we have experience in it. And so what we do is we end up bringing people into our organization. They have to fail forward in some form. They have to be able to figure out how to learn their job. And if we're not training them, they learn through osmosis. They learn through messing up. And so, when we look how we drive the excellence factor and move people into, I want this person to be an amazing customer service person. I want them to give our customers the absolute best experience. Well, as leaders, how do we model that? And so this whole philosophy, it is so easy to find out everything that's wrong. It's easy as you walk into your store or your business or whatever, and in an instant, you can see everything that's wrong. But what you miss is everything that's right. You miss everything that people are doing, people delivering at a high end and so on. And then you get that side contract. You go, hey, Steve, we got the gig, well done. And you walk away. And that is not the recognition. This idea of recognizing and rewarding what you see people doing well, I think is key, because I do believe that good behavior, the best behavior, will wane over time. Bad behavior is always going to escalate. So, for instance, I had a supervisor come to me and she said, last night the bartender was swearing with the customers. And I said, oh, okay. Did you do anything about it? What did you do? She goes, well, nothing. She's not typically like that. So I didn't do anything. What do you think happened the next night?
Same thing, I presume.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So we need to be able to recognize and respond to bad behavior and do correction very quickly. But we also need to recognize when people do amazing things. And so being able to pull people aside and say, hey, Carl, you know what? You are an absolute fabulous podcaster. I love that you give your audience, your guests time to speak and you don't talk over them. That's brilliant. How does that make you feel? And how does that make you think about your performance in your realm?
It certainly focuses your attention, doesn't it? And I think this is, I've gone through my career and I've had situations where I've been so intent on making improvements, that you lose sight of what is actually good, and you don't give that anywhere near as much credit. You recognize it in your head, but you want to make more improvements. You just want to get better and better and better. And it's, I've taken that away with me from that experience. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. So I mean,
it's interesting. Sorry, it's interesting that you say that, because Dan Sullivan wrote a book called The Gap in the Game. And the whole premise of the book is that wherever we are right now, we're always looking forward, talking about what we don't have. And we need to take a moment to be where we are right now and look backwards at what we used to have and how we've grown, right? And we have to give ourselves that grace. And that happens in our business, that happens with our employees, that happens with our own leadership capacity, is look where you used to be and look how you...
Yeah, well, those lessons, they become ingrained, don't they? And they stick with you. So it's good to reflect. So, I mean, hospitality, it is obviously well recognized for customer service. So are there other aspects of customer experience brought from the hospitality sector that apply and can be well used in other sectors? Are there good lessons there that just maybe you don't think of that obvious to other sectors?
I think one mindset, and I've talked, I trained gas station attendants, gas station owners in hospitality because in their mind they were thinking we're not in hospitality, we're in retail. And I have to say though, Carl, if you drive into a city or into area and you stop at a gas station or you stop at the front desk at a hotel and you want to know what there is to do because you're stuck in this town for the next couple of days, who do you talk to? And you're going to talk to whoever you have face to face contact with. And so I was brought in to talk and teach these gas station operators how to bring hospitality now into the retail environment because it's interesting. I guess I was lucky because I think when I was 18 years old, I had a boss who looked at me and says, "Mark, if you're not serving a customer, you better darn well be serving somebody who is." Right? We all have customers, right?
Yeah.
We all have, and the customers might not be an external customer, but we're always serving somebody. And please don't say, "Yeah, yeah, I serve my boss."
Yeah.
You might, and then some, but I'm hoping it's going down. I'm hoping you're serving somebody to help them be better at their jobs, so that they can be better at giving the customer the service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That's really clear. So we've got to talk about AI. So from your perspective, what conversations are you having, or maybe you're seeing other sort of business leaders have around automation and AI adoption? What sort of things have been
Yeah.
discussed?
So I do quite a lot of work now with organizations, kind of uncovering AI for them. What's happening right now in businesses is you have people who don't know anything about AI and they're very scared of it. When they think AI, they think, "Oh, it's going to take over the world, and we're going to be taken over by robots and all this sort of stuff." And they don't understand it. But at the same token, most of their employees are using it kind of. It's called shadow use of AI,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Where they're actually they've figured some of it out and they're starting to use it. And so typically I'm getting called now because it's like, well, I know my staff are kind of using it now, but we need to kind of figure out what our overarching philosophy is going to be around AI and how it's going to affect our culture and our business and so on. And so we know AI is out there. We know that people are talking to it for mental health reasons. Please get yourself a therapist, honestly. You get an idea from ChatGPT, but please book yourself a therapist. It's a little scary that there are actually some isolationists now who that's all the only thing they talk to now is they talk to AI, which is a little frightening. But having said that, there AI is a tool. And it reminds me a little bit if you've ever watched Downton Abbey, the very first episode. I laughed my fool head off because the main character, Mary, goes in to see Granny, and Granny in her house has candles everywhere. And Mary looks at Granny and says, "But Granny, we had electricity installed. You don't need all these candles." And Maggie, played by Maggie Smith, or Granny, who's played by Maggie Smith, is sitting in her chair going, "Oh, I don't want all this fire in my walls. I don't want to burn down my house. No, I'd rather do it." And so here's it's a great kind of metaphor for how we look at technology, right? We look at technology from our perspective of what we're used to and not necessarily what it can do later on, what its potential is, right? And so people look at AI and they're looking like, "Oh, I don't want to use AI because I don't want to lose authenticity, or, I'm going to use it but I'm scared of my privacy, and there's all these different preconceived notions. And so part of what I think it's really important is this idea of curiosity. I think curiosity, when it comes to the age of AI, I think is absolutely essential in many different areas. If you're a supervisor and you've never really been trained in leadership, why don't you go to ChatGPT and say to ChatGPT, "Hey, ChatGPT, I want you to become the best world-class leadership coach and help me solve a couple of problems. My problem is I know delegation is important, but I don't know how to do it. Or it doesn't seem like I'm doing it effectively. Could you please coach me through it?" Just give it a try, see what it does, right? It's a tool. And I think the more curious we get about it, the more we have the ability to do things. Now, I will say, publishing your whole business plan, your bank accounts, your social insurance numbers, and your staff roster and throw it into AI is probably not a good idea. One of the things that when I teach the 101 course on AI, I suggest using LinkedIn as a kind of benchmark. If you wouldn't post it on LinkedIn, don't put it into ChatGPT. At least not yet, right? We don't know how much privacy we're going to have. The other thing is, we're building systems and methods in AI, especially now you hear the word agentic AI, which is AI is now going to start doing tasks for us. I have agentic AI. If you go to my website, eliteheadlinespeakers.com, I have my little digital avatar. His name is CyberMark 3000. You can ask him. He is 100% AI generative. He will look through. You can ask him any questions about my business. You can even ask him to tell you a joke. There's uses for it, but this idea that agentic AI is going to do all your work for you and replace all your staff, I think, is way too early in the journey. But having said that, we always have to have a human in the loop. No matter what happens, what feedback you get from AI. And we're talking ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever. If it's important to you, you need to absolutely put on your critical thinking hat. So here's my hope for the future is that as human beings with ChatGPT, I'm hoping that one of the biggest muscles we're going to start developing is going to be critical thinking skills. Because all too often now people are getting absolutely slammed because the reports they're putting out are fake. The data is fake. We've heard lawyers getting in trouble because the case law that their briefs have cited doesn't exist, right? Nobody's double checking it, and so we're not at a junction where we can just set it and leave it, right? But it is such an amazing tool. I look back, when I had to schedule 400 hospitality workers within a casino. And I thought, oh my goodness, if I had AI to help me with that, instead of taking me 5 days to generate schedules,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
People have time off and I have requests and I have availabilities and new people are coming on board and we have to train them. AI would have had it done in less than an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of customer experience, I mean, you've talked about, the human interaction with AI as well, but in what ways do you think AI can, maybe now and certainly in the future, genuinely improve customer experience? So is it going to improve it, or, is it still a very human?
Well, right now, I think it's got some challenges. I just went into a telecommunication conversation with their AI, and it was very, very frustrating because it's set up in such a way that it's trying to figure out what's wrong and then give you some answers based on the FAQs they have. And I just ended up in this loop. So after about 15 minutes of going through the thing, it started again. And it was just extremely frustrating. I think right now, I think we can have some semblance of automation. So, for instance, if you have a help desk where somebody is sending in a request, oh my goodness, my software is not working properly. I think that you can have AI, number one, drop a very quick email saying something to the effect of, I'm really sorry that you're having a challenge with this. We are working on it right now. Then it sends an email to the technician that says, this one customer has a problem with and this is a 911 thing for this customer. I think we can build systems in to make us more aware and also allow us to become more human in the interaction. Do you think a customer would have any challenges with getting an email after they've kind of done the support thing, that they get a email that says, "Hi, Carl, I am a digital avatar for this company. I just want to let you know that we did receive your message. We're taking this very important and we've just escalated this to our service department to take care of this quickly. Please bear with us. We'll get a human in the loop for you very, very quickly." Would you be opposed to that kind of email?
Certainly wouldn't. No, I mean, any communication sometimes from businesses that you've been trying to get results out of is a positive. So I get that. I mean, what I would take away normally, I think, is if I've had a good positive experience from a worker at that business, I will feel like, I want to personally thank that person's contribution to helping me resolve my problem, which, maybe that's not going to be the case anymore. We're just going to be expecting the business to run like clockwork using AI. I don't know. That's a little bit of how I feel about it.
Well, but again, yes, I do see, like, if when the technician came and they'd solved my problem, I did the review and it was like this telecommunication thing had my problem. It was really great. And thank goodness Carl was here to help me solve my problem. Thank you very much, Carl. You were great. It can be a thing, but I think really at the end of the day, it is the fact that, we test customer experience and customer satisfaction. It doesn't happen when things are perfect. It's really when everything hits the fan. It's when things go horribly, horribly wrong. That is the true test of customer service, customer experience, because that's becomes the most memorable thing. I have a problem. Took the time to help me solve it. You helped me solve it. It's over. It's great. I am now a loyal fan.
Yeah, I could understand that. I mean, do you think people will, in your view, do you think they will care whether they are, dealing with somebody that is actually AI? They feel like they're on a telephone call with a real person and they're getting a good experience from that. And are they going to be bothered if they actually find out that that was AI? They were duped. They thought they were talking to a real person, or is it just going to be the norm and people are going to be thinking, well, it could be AI, but I don't mind. It feels like a human interaction, and I'm happy.
So let me turn the question around. So, Karl, if you have a problem with your cell service, is your first thought, I have to call my telecommunication company? I better get a human or else. Or is it, I have a problem with my telecommunication with my self service and I need to solve my. So I think when it comes down to the efficiency of service is really going to be the key. Again, my experience was really negative because it took 15 minutes of typing and talking to the AI because it wouldn't send me to a technician or to the service department. And so it had me jumping through all these hoops. And that kind of that didn't make for a great customer experience. But at the end, if AI evolves to the point where we feel like we're being heard, we're being understood, and then a solution is forthcoming and that we could get our problem solved, why do we care if it's AI? And I don't think we can. AI is so perfect. Like ChatGPT is so wonderful in affirming our existence, right? It'll say like, Karl, that was a wonderful idea. Right. And it'll give you feed. It's very good at affirming. So it knows it can help us make us feel good about our decision making.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So why can't we turn that into empathy? I understand that this is really hard for you. It's very tough. We are doing everything. And then you give people the plan. AI or not, when somebody gets on the phone and go, oh, I'm sorry, we have a service down. We'll try to get to it as soon as possible. Yeah. But when? When we have no way of knowing it. Well, can you please give me a benchmark? I have a business to run. I need to move things forward. Can you please tell me what's going on? I feel like I'm in the dark, right? Whether that's AI or human being, you're going to get choked by that. You're going to get frustrated because we have our own needs, and of course, we're in our own little bubble,
Yeah.
and in our bubble is our world, and we need our world to work.
It's so true. I mean, I think, well, there's a couple of experiences recently. My wife was on the phone to the bank about something she couldn't resolve online. And it was such a straightforward, I was sort of sat there having a cup of coffee while she happened to be on the phone, sort of listening to this conversation. And I was thinking of it in the context of AI at the time. And the conversation was so efficient, so easily resolved. And my wife came away happy. And I said to her, was that definitely a person at the other end of the phone? Because it just was too perfect. And she didn't care. She didn't know. She didn't care. If it had gone a different way and she was frustrated, she might have cared because, you want somebody, it feels good when somebody says, look, my name is Bella. I'm going to take personal responsibility for this. I'll make sure that this gets resolved. That sometimes is the I don't know, the reassurance that you need sometimes. But that's, I guess, what you get frustrated at with chatbots and such like now anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're still very much in our infancy when it comes down to chatbots and that sort of thing. I mean, there's all sorts of companies now doing full AI voice,
Yeah.
which is amazing. Like it's amazing technology.
Yeah.
But I think the normal mom and pop organization don't have that capacity at this junction. I don't think it's so widely used that it can be that good yet. But it's like anything. It is so top heavy for me to set up my digital avatar on my website. There's a lot of work that has to go into it before you can even turn on the switch, as it
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
Because it has to learn your business. It has to learn what you do. It has to understand what your true north is for your organization, right? And that was something when I kind of worked with my CyberMark little digital avatar on my website. It's like, this is the true north. Here's how I want to deal with things. Here's how I want to portray this business and kind of the culture of what we're trying to achieve. And so his job is not to conquer that. His job is not to go contrary to that. His job is to support it. And, I think, again, I have no problem with a digital avatar, being, hi, my name is Steve. I'm a digital avatar for this company. If you would prefer to speak to a human being, please dial 0. and we will connect you as soon as you can. But please know that you're number 322, or you can deal with me right now and we can stay together. What do you think?
I
Press
think
one if you'd like to do that.
it's so true, isn't it? That is the key thing, I think, with this technology. But I mean, we talked about the customer experience there. Is it exactly the same? Can AI help with employee experience, or is there more that can be done there for employee experience, or
I,
is
I
it?
think eventually, I think eventually it can. I think because when you think about what are the context of like bad employee experiences, so part of the challenge with employees, like I mentioned at the top of the show, is I believe that employees are on a journey with us. And if you don't believe me, would you talk to employee day one the same way you talk to an employee day five? And the answer is always no. It's like a new person doesn't understand a whole lot of things. And so we do have a very predictable path that people are on. And this is chapter 18 of my book, by the way. And when we're able to answer their questions and fulfill their needs at each one of these at each one of these milestones, each one of these phases, then they will manifest and go towards this idea of ambassadorship. It's unfortunate, though, that the majority of our workforce right now, according to Gallup, is sitting in what I like to call the pit of the tainted. The pit of the tainted is where people go to wallow when they're not happy. They're the ones who are kind of fallen off the path. They are disengaged. They are doing the minimum amount of work. Some people are heavily, heavily, heavily disengaged. About 15% of the working population right now is so disengaged that they're poison to our businesses. And, really, you have to get rid of the cancers in your business. But having said that, understanding kind of that people are on this path, having managers who are now coaches to help people along those paths, and then being able to leverage AI to help you fulfill needs and applications on certain things. So, for instance, if you run shifts and an employee requests time off or holiday schedules and this sort of thing, you can use AI to help make that so much quicker. If somebody needs to have a holiday kind of approved quickly, you could do a tentative approval based on criteria that AI can send. Hey, Carl, you know what? So far, based on all the information you provided, it looks like that this might be a clear sailing for you. Please check with your managers. Donna will connect with you in a day or so just to confirm, right? So at least we can start using AI to unburden some of our processes when it comes down to our employees. Now, would I suggest that somebody sits down with their AI and says, okay, AI, it's time for my annual evaluation. Hit me up. Let's do this. I would.
That's fun. So you've worked through multiple waves of business change already. Does the AI era feel fundamentally different from previous technology shifts you've seen, or are elements here of deja vu?
I think that anytime technology happens, we're threatened. I remember I had a Popular Mechanics magazine in 1976 that said the new millennia would be a time where we will have a paperless society and we will just be in leisure mode. The liars,
Yeah,
they lied, Carl.
we were
They
preparing for
lied.
that.
And so it's interesting because as technology comes through, like I remember the fax machine coming through for the very first time, right? And all of a sudden people are like, oh well, this is what about our privacy? What happens if somebody sees my fax? Or what? And it's like we adjust
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what we do. I remember Y2K. I remember I was working at a casino in Y2K, and of course, all the slot machines are computers, basically. And so the whole industry was in a kerfuffle. And I remember sitting Y2K. I'm in 1999 at 11:59, and it's like all the computers are off. Where everything's shut down because we're going to start up slowly as soon as right because everybody was scared of what that would look like. And but it's interesting that we are constantly handicapped by our technology, right? About 4 years ago, one of our big companies here in Canada, Rogers, went down, and they went down for about 4 days. So 4 days, no internet. For companies that ATMs were down, right? All of a sudden, people put signs on their windows that says cash only. Well, how can people get cash? They can't get to an ATM. Banks couldn't work because their computer systems were down. And so it was hugely disruptive. And I laughed because, one of the very first things I used to do is thinking about from an idea of kind of what happens when this shuts down. And we have to think about that. We get so comfortable with the way things are. It's what happens if we lose the internet right now? Or what happens if we lose communication right now? And so we need to be able to look at our business, and AI is no different We heard a couple of weeks ago that the United States government shut down or forced Anthropic to shut down one of their language models. And they went to the United States, says, we don't want this, please shut it down. They said, okay, we will. Now, if we're really dependent on AI for everything, if we have agents doing work and we have all these different processes, these are systems we don't own. We don't control. I'm imagining that when this podcast is done, you're going to put it on YouTube.
Indeed. Yep.
And you're going to put it on a podcast service.
Spotify.
We don't own those services. It could be that at some point YouTube turns around and says, hey, we don't want anything to do with Marc because he's just way too goofy for our channel. And they can just decide, they want to shut this down. And so we are at the beck and call of the demands of the technology that we bring into face. So what happens when we're so ingrained with AI and then something happens to it and it shuts it down? Does that mean we stop? When we had those 4 days, I said to people, why don't you just get those old credit card receipts? You can get them on Amazon. Everybody here, if you have a business, get yourself a package of credit card receipts because those are little sales contracts. If you read the writing on them, you just put in people's credit card numbers, you fill it in, you have them sign it, you give them a copy, you keep a copy, and then when the internet comes back on, you can upload all your data. But everybody sat around going, oh, we can't serve you because we have no debit card, no credit card. Are you crazy?
This is a scary prospect you're bringing up here. I mean, even,
but it is
business risk continuity. Nobody wants to deal with this. This is too big a problem. It's massive. It's government level massive, isn't it? It would take that level of intervention to get the country running again. No doubt about it.
Ultimately, as and we talk about customer service, our job is to provide customer service, and we do whatever we can in the best way possible. And that means if the internet goes down, your food and beverage service will take out a notepad and pencil, right? And we'll keep things going and we'll keep things working to the best that we can so our customers don't feel it. And so we have to always ask the question, what happens when this goes down? Can we still bring the human in the loop to make sure that we're delivering the best service we can?
I think these are the sort of questions that people are going to be asking of their own businesses, their employers, themselves, when bringing in AI to their business. I think, it is ultra reliant, that they're going to have to be on this. So I think there's obviously an important communication aspect here, a change management aspect here. So what sort of advice from your experience can you give for these sort of change management and communication aspects when adopting or introducing AI, shall we say?
I think transparency is always the key. When it comes down to change management, the one thing that really hurts people, you always hear people don't like change. What they don't like is they don't like being left in the dark. They don't like that things get sprung on them. And so, being able to bring people together, I did a presentation where the office team all got together and we talked about how we can leverage AI to help them do some of their work. We actually I do live demos. I have them bring case in and we demo it live and we do different prompts to see if we get different feedback and all that sort of stuff. But when we do this, I think it's really essential that now we have to give people the skills to be able to get curious with AI. We have to understand the liability component of it. Like what can we play with AI? What shouldn't we play with AI? And then we give people the ability, we train them with how do you bring really great prompts into the foray? How do you get curious with AI? How do you help solve your problem? Again, part of the challenge is everybody's so under-resourced right now. It's like, you want to train me to do AI? You want to take me through a thing? I don't have time for this. And this becomes the biggest handicap. It's like, if you don't have time, what was it? If you don't have time to do it right the first time, how are you going to find time to do it right the second time?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you don't have time to train your staff now, how are you going to find time to correct everything that's wrong later?
It's so true. It's a big issue, obviously. I mean, AI is a big umbrella, isn't it? It's not just something nice and discreet that you can focus on. It's a huge area. Yes, it relatively easy to start to tap into and explore, but to really get an organization working with it in harmony in a coordinated way and in an effective way is going to take a lot of commitment for businesses to really set aside resources and time to do that. So it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's an open-ended timeline, isn't it? So it's not going away. It's going to require a constant sort of attention. So I've got some quick fire questions for you, if you don't mind. So just what do you think customer expectations will look like in the next few years? Will they be fundamentally the same, or are they going to shift? Can you see any?
I don't think they're going to shift. I think ultimately customer expectation is at the very least deliver what you promise, right? And I do believe that any customer interaction you're going to have three outcomes. One is going to go that's a shame. The other one is going to be no impression whatsoever, and the other one is going to be wow, that was really great. And so the interesting thing about customer expectations is that everybody's got them. You and I have this is the first time you and I are getting together. You have an expectation. I have an expectation. You're a professional podcast host. Thank God you are. Yay. And that you're really good. And then you have an expectation that I'll be a enlightened, good, hopefully fun guest. Hopefully I've been able to deliver on that.
Absolutely.
Those expectations help build trust. And so we build trust by delivering on expectations. When things go terribly wrong, that's where the wow factor comes in. That's where we turn around and people go, you know what? I love dealing with this company because they really cared about me. And that's all people want, right?
Sounds great advice. So, I mean, what is maybe one thing that businesses usually misunderstand or just regularly get wrong about customer experience?
That's interesting question. What do people misunderstand about customer experience? I think that the one thing I see constantly is they think that customers should care about their angst. So this idea of, you go into a restaurant and, you're waiting forever and you say, hey, can I please get my food? I've been here for 25 minutes. You think you have it tough? We got so many. Don't you understand that we have? And so this idea that a customer needs to understand our business or our angst or our pressure is absolutely wrong. A customer doesn't care about what you're going through because at the end of the day, I mentioned it's about delivering on what you promised. If I see reviews about this particular restaurant or this store or whatever, and I make a decision, it's because somewhere there's an inherent promise that you're going to be one of the best people I'm going to deal with. I've chosen you because I read the reviews and people said you were great. Now, you might not have told me as I walked in the door, hey, welcome to our optometry clinic. We're the best in the business, so we're going to make sure we take really good care of you. You might not say that, but it's implied by the fact that you have this business and you have reviews. Now, I know like my wife, for instance, we can't go anywhere to eat without her checking reviews first. And if they have like a 4.6, she's looking for 4.7. If it's 4.7, she's looking for a 5 before we make that decision. So it's really essential that we deliver on our promises. And, my respond framework is really the perfect way to be able to do that. Because very publicly, when somebody says we had a problem and we weren't happy, we're able to respond in a way that makes you look like the good guy. And so when people come across the rating and they see the review, they look, oh, here's his promise. He even says the promise. It's part of the respond framework is I want you to tell people what your mission is and why you do what you do. And so we're making a promise. We have an inherent promise when somebody walks into our business that they're going to get a certain experience. And so when we understand what that looks like, and for anybody who's wanting it, if you go to my website, marchaine.com, I have a thing there, touch point assessment, where I think every touch point within a business will help build trust and set expectations. And that touch point assessment will take you through the eyes of a customer walking through your business.
That sounds pretty cool. We'll definitely check that out. So next quick fire question. What was the best piece of leadership advice you've ever received?
If you're not serving a customer, you darn well better be serving somebody who is. That has stayed with me since I was 18 years old.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. So, and finally, I ask all my guests this question. What one must-read book do you highly recommend that I and our audience read? You feel free to drop your own book into that. So it doesn't have to be one book, but
okay. Well, the first book is if you want frontline leaders, if you want to look at your culture and redefine how you do things from the frontline leaders upwards, my book is great for that. It's broken into small chapters. It takes our business operations through kind of the lens of live theater. So lights, camera, action, lights being kind of all the foundational. Why do we do what we do? How do we create that North Star to be able to put on the best show possible? Camera is, are we camera ready? Are we reflecting to the world what we want to have happened? And of course, action is service delivery. And every chapter has worksheets afterward. And so what I found the best usage, and a lady who got promoted into running a grocery store with multi-generations actually took this through her front line, and they would read one chapter a week, and then they get together for a half hour and they would go through the exercises at the end. Everybody would have to do the homework, and then they would say, okay, how do we apply this to our store?
Yeah.
And so each week they would get together. It was a perfect way to do team building for people who are multi-generational, where trust was low. They were able, she says it was the best thing she's ever done. But this idea of putting a new lens on our business to really highlight how ridiculous some of our processes are. And then being able to look at it and saying, if we're going to put on a show for our customers, what do we need to change? That's one. I did mention Dan Sullivan's a gap in the game. Was a really good mindset shift, working through that, being able to understand how we're driven to always move forward and how we kind of get stressed by stuff we don't have and we haven't accomplished yet, but then being able to celebrate and give ourselves grace for where we've come from.
Brilliant. They sound really good. So, Marc, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. You're a great storyteller, so I've really enjoyed hearing your insights today. And I'm sure our audience will as well, especially around customer experience. You know, we don't really hear too much about that. So that's excellent to hear that. So it's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you for joining me, Marc.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. And for our audience, if you enjoyed this episode too, please follow Aligned Minds AI on LinkedIn for practical AI tips and updates on future episodes of Aligned on AI. I will share details of today's podcast and guest and the books on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But please do subscribe and give me a follow on LinkedIn for more content like this.